these authors write this fiction. So as a fiction author, he's well placed to understand how this happened. So welcome, guys. Welcome, Thunderous.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening to JC. Good evening to you, Lloyd, and good evening to everybody listening in the audience.
Yeah,
good evening,
welcome, JC.
everyone. Thank you, Lloyd, and thank you, Thunderous. Good to be here, and hello, everybody watching.
Yeah, I just want to have a quick check that we are live on YouTube, that there's no issues, because I had an issue last week during one stream, and I could not understand what the issue was. Oh, but it shows we are live. So yeah, let's have a look. Just want to confirm that YouTube is live. We are live on Rumble, YouTube, and X. And yes, we're definitely on YouTube. So yeah. So Thunderous, what are we talking about today? Because it's been a very interesting week with, of course, the usual Hamas shenanigans, the Palestinians doing their thing, and of course we've had Mohammed Hijab go wild on TV with was it Alan Dershowitz? That was fascinating. So yeah, take us away.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that we could probably go through this week as far as news in the UK is concerned. I think the big one at the moment, as far as relative to us is concerned, is the Uncensored with Piers Morgan, Alan Dershowitz, and Mohammed Hijab. I know another channel has broken down the show through increment moments as it progressed, but I wanted to look at the show or have a discussion on the show from a different angle as to the agenda of Mohammed Hijab. What are we seeing here? Because it's easy to break down the show. The comments he made, his churlish, outrageous behavior, for those who watched the show, was absolutely unbelievable, considering the format he's been given. But I wanted to run it by you, Lloyd, and certainly our guest JC. Is there a pattern we're observing with Mohammed Hijab? What are you seeing as far as behavior is concerned? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? So the thing I wanted, I think it might be served good as a recap to look at some of the interviews that Mohammed Hijab has had in recent years. We can consider he's been on Piers Morgan 3 times. He's been with Jordan Peterson. He's been with Bart Ehrman. He's had the Yasser Qadi interview. He's also, obviously, he frequents Speaker's Corner at Hyde Park, but has made some very interesting comments when you analyze them that, you know, just if we look at each one as an example, Jordan Peterson's interview with Mohammed Hijab, I just thought there was nothing happening there. It was just a pretty bland interview between 2 pretty bland men. The Piers Morgan one, the first one about the situation in Gaza, was interesting. The second one, it sort of like escalated with Rabbi Shmuley. There were a lot of ad hominems being thrown. The third one with Alan Dershowitz was absolutely outrageous.
Yeah,
you know.
Something that sprang to mind for me was he started accusing Alan Dershowitz of obviously pedophilia with a 16 or 17-year-old. You know, did you touch her? Did you touch her? No. I mean, now Alan Dershowitz came back with his defense saying that she had recanted from her claims, etc. I mean, I'm not overly familiar with that case, so I'm not going to go there. But here's the thing: Mohammed Hijab is on record stating that he fully supports the fact that Muhammad married a 9-year-old and consummated that marriage with a 9-year-old. Now he's giving Alan Dershowitz a hard time over supposed, illicit sexual encounter with the girl because she was 16 or 17. So how that's a contradiction on its face. That's hypocrisy on its face.
The girl in question was actually the same one that was named with Prince Andrew. She has then recanted that statement and got Dershowitz mixed up with somebody else. That's now actually officially on record. So Alan Dershowitz was actually cleared of that. So it was the same girl related to Prince Andrew. But it seems to go to show how ill-informed Mohammed Hijab is to have not considered maybe doing some due diligence when you're going against international defense lawyers such as Alan Dershowitz, and on such a renowned show as Piers Morgan as well, that you would make such a statement. and particularly when it's not in context with what the discussion of the show was about. So I just thought for myself, well, when you look at, say, Mohammed Hijab and his interview with Bart Ehrman, now he couldn't press Bart Ehrman on two things, which I thought was quite interesting. One was with the alleged corruption of the Bible. When he brought up the alleged corruption of the Bible, Bart Ehrman turned around and said, no, the narrative of the Bible is still intact. Fine, there are grammatical errors and word changes, but the essence, the story, and the narrative of the Bible is still intact. And Mohammed Hijab did not push back on that for anybody who saw the interview. He was calm and respectful, probably and possibly because he couldn't argue with somebody who knew more than him on the subject.
But Bart Ehrman is also responsible for creating the impression that the Bible is hopelessly corrupted, hopelessly falsified. Or, I mean, Bart Ehrman has said things that can be easily taken that way. So, because the controversy sold books. Yet, later on, he turns around and says, no, that's not what I meant.
But even whatever he meant, because I know what you mean by Bart Ehrman implying that the Bible had been corrupted or via mistranslations to manuscripts found that the narrative has altered or changed. But in the interview with Mohammed Hijab, his category that's taken his pole in the ground, a line in the sand, so to speak. And the Bible has not been corrupted, and Mohammed Hijab does not push back on that. But it's a respectful conversation taking place. He then questions Bart Ehrman about the execution of Jesus, which is fundamental to Islamic doctrine. Yet Bart Ehrman makes it quite clear that the execution of Jesus is one of the most testifiable incidences in human history. Mohammed Hijab doesn't push back on that. Okay. Then we have the interview with Mohammed Hijab when he's with Ali Diarrhea, and they're talking to Christian Prince, and that's where he's verbally shouting, "You're finished, boy, you're finished." And that kind of churlish, egotistical behavior comes forward, which you think to yourself, well, this doesn't make sense for a guy that's been to several universities, and one of the universities he's been educated in is actually Oxford University. Then we have the Yasser Qadi incident where we have the holes in the narrative. So I'm looking at a man here and I'm thinking, this guy, either he is what we see on the screen, he must have some kind of mental disorder to behave the way he does with renowned, respectable people in some instances, but cool, calm, collected in other instances, and then reveals the things that he does in the comments that he makes. For instance, he doesn't push back on Bart Ehrman on two fundamental points as far as Islamic theology is concerned. He doesn't, how can I say, when he's in Hyde Park, as you've mentioned, he doesn't say anything contrary about the Quran. In fact, he encourages that with the Quran, if you went by the Quran alone, you can have sex with a 6-year-old girl. He makes that clear.
Well, he said that.
Yeah.
So why does he have a problem with teenagers then? Go ahead, JC.
That it wasn't 6 years old. He said 5 when he was at Speaker's Corner. Yeah.
That is...
I think when you were saying, I think JC is right there. I think what he meant by that was when we're saying 6 years old, we're identifying the minimal, because we've got the minimal points with Muhammad and Aisha. But when you go by the Quran, which doesn't mention Aisha, and as far as consummation is concerned, we have to go by the Iddah. Is it the Iddah period where even if she hasn't had menses, you have to give 3 months of divorce period or cleansing period before you can have relations. And that is in context without the person having menses.
Yeah, just for the reference, the audience, in Islamic law, there is no age limit for a Muslim man to consummate a marriage with a female. There is no lower age limit. She could literally be in the cradle, and that would be legal under the Sharia. This is another reason we do not want the Sharia and should reject it.
So what are your thoughts then? Because you've seen we've all seen these kind of videos with Mohammed Hijab featuring so many different locations with different types of people. What are your thoughts on Mohammed Hijab's behavior, Lloyd?
I mean, he's a bully. He's aggressive. However, this ties in with the Sharia in that they are required to assert dominance through aggression. And remember, they have to hate those who go against the Islamic doctrine, that don't permit them to spread Islamic doctrine, that undermine the effort that Islam has to take over. So they have to act with aggression, and they have to use harsh language. They have to use vile, harsh, aggressive language. That is very much part and parcel of the Islamic doctrine as taught in the Sharia.
So what about you, JC? What have you been watching any recent interviews with Mohammed Hijab? What do you think of his behavior?
Well, I think is exactly what Lloyd has said. I just have like a different angle to that, which is it is a matter of values. So in Europe or with Christian values, when we engage in a conversation with someone, we create this story to begin with, which is I am going to speak the truth and the other person is going to speak the truth. And by doing so, we also agree that we can both be wrong. But because we're speaking the truth, we can find out what information the other person is referring to, and then we can correct it. And that is like Christian values. We are going to be truthful. That doesn't apply in Islam. It is about you need to shut the other person up. It doesn't really matter what you say. You just need to make sure that they don't get a word in, or you need to just do anything at all so that they don't continue with the conversation. You can attack their personality, their character, you can lie, anything at all, which is very opposite to Christian values. That's why when I actually watched that debate and Piers Morgan was just looking at Mohammed Hijab and saying, why are you doing this? Like, this is not done. And I'm actually watching that thinking, yeah, Piers Morgan doesn't understand that he's dealing with a very different morality system. Mohammed Hijab is not there to speak truth and be more intelligent, more clever, more eloquent. He's there to shut the other people up in whichever way that he can. So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
But what about
Go on, please. Go on, please, Thunderous.
What I was thinking was, but when you consider the way that Islam is in the media at the moment for various situations, whether it's the Manchester incident at the airport, or whether it's Muslims being advised to hide weapons in their mosques, whether it's about the protests in this country, all the imagery, and to use the new buzz phrase, the optics, that we're seeing in the media with reference to Islam, they all seem to be in the negative. And the indigenous of each and every country that Islam is manifest in is having a distasteful response towards Islam. Would you not have thought that, given the situation and the image of Islam in the media, not just in England, but by extension Europe, and then therefore by further extension the rest of the world, that Mohammed Hijab's behavior would be a lot more different than what we saw on Piers Morgan?
That's
JC,
for me. I think that, well, if you saw what happened before actually it went live, if you are on X, Mohammed Hijab started saying, like, I won. And Piers Morgan was like, what are you talking about? It was a really, really bad thing. So the thing is, it really depends on how, if somebody has really just taken up all of the Islamic values, if they are actually very, very high up on that, say, learning of Sharia, then they are going to see that as a complete win. But the ones that haven't, the ones in Europe that are, perfectly reasonable people, they are actually behaving more like Christians than Muslims. They will see that and they will say, that's not all right. But I really think for really hardcore Muslims, that is just how they need to behave. I don't think that many of them would look at that negatively. And some of the comments that I saw next, they were basically praising him for doing a very good job, which is unthinkable.
Yeah, I went on to Mohammed Hijab's own YouTube channel because I knew the edited version will be there, and pretty much what I thought it was, the edited version. But it wasn't so much the edit that I wanted to watch. It was more the case of what are the comments going to be. And absolutely every comment was, mashallah, wonderful, you wiped the floor with these people. This is, you showed Piers Morgan the biased reality and blah, blah, blah. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. I was thinking, were you guys even watching the same show? What are you watching to make these comments?
Well, look, it's not about reality. just so the audience knows, in terms of what I discussed earlier with the fact that they have to use harsh language, don't forget, those of you who've watched the channel will know this. I've shown it before. For those who are new, very welcome. Good to have you here, and thanks everyone. Thank you, Lil Lo Ming, for your hard work. Much appreciated. And yeah, I want to say thanks also. Let's see, there's so many names here, like Andrew Martin. Thank you very much. But yeah, so notice here, censuring with harsh words, right? Writing the wrong by hand, intimidation, assault, and force of arms. These are things Muslims have to do. Let's look at harsh. Let's continue with that. Notice reviling him and harshness, forcibly stopping the act, such as by breaking musical instruments and pouring out wine, right? So you can use harshness and being able to censure. It'll go on to say that you're allowed to use harsh language, you're allowed to insult, you're allowed to say things that are pretty nasty, and that's what is required of you, right? Muslims are required to do that.
So, but in summary, then, because I know other channels are probably broken down and done a word by word discussion on the interview, but in summary, then, because I've just noticed Lydia Anello put a comment in there: hijab exposed Islam. Do you think it was a case of hijab exposed Islam, or do you think hijab is exposing Islam?
I think he does. He shows Islam as it is in doctrine. Now, Muslims may or may not be aligned with doctrine or may not correctly know it or express it, but the doctrine, he is trying to live faithfully by the doctrine, and that kind of behavior is 100% authentic Islamic. In fact, it is better behavior than those who are polite and who shrink back.
Okay. What about yourself, JC? What are your thoughts on the interview? Do you think Muhammad Hijab exposed Islam, or do you think Muhammad Hijab is exposing Islam?
I think every time that he speaks, people leave Islam. People who are not very much into it, they see that and they think, I don't want to be associated with that. I don't think that, I think he's just doing the right thing by Islamic standards, which is what we've discussed before. It's just, he just needs to shut the other people up. But I do actually have a bit of a spin on his whole character, because back in 2016, when Hatun Tash turned up at the speaker's corner with those 26 books, Mohammed Hijab was there, and he asked Muslims to get out of there, to not listen. And at that point, he was apparently, by the pictures and stuff, being very fit, very looking after himself. But then 4 years later, he has let himself go quite a bit, and he speaks with Yasir Qadhi when he's just asking him, almost begging him for the final answer to retain his faith. And of course, Yasir Qadhi, I know what Yasir Qadhi should have answered, what lie he should have given, but he messed up and he didn't lie, and that was the problem. So I reckon there is a good chance that Mohammed Hijab actually lost his faith at that point, but he just has to keep playing the game, because it's now a business. If you've been told all your life that Islam is the only religion, what happens when you lose your faith? One, you actually think, okay, well, there is a God, there is Satan. I was praying to Satan. Now I need to find
Wow.
an alternative. I need to see where the truth is. Or possibly you just say, I was hoodwinked. All religions are false. But hey, I have already memorized the Quran. I've already done all of this research. So I will keep using it just as a business, because religion has always been a business. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the case, because after that thing with Yasir Qadhi, I saw him at another place. Join.
For the super sticker, very kind of you. Thank you very much.
The Mohammed Hijab asked, he was asked, so what is like the good selling points for somebody joining Islam? And he said, preservation. And then he moved on. And he's like, yeah, of course you're saying preservation, and you know that that never happened. So I wouldn't surprise me if he already left Islam and he's just taking it as a business.
You know what? What you just said there. Sorry, did I just interrupt you, Lloyd?
And I was just going to say that, what if he felt that his faith was threatened by Yasir Qadhi, and that aggression is his way of coping, and this aggression sort of gives him the confidence to continue, in spite of the fact that his confidence was really shaken by by Yasser Qadi.
That's an interesting point, because his attitude has changed since that interview as well. There's been several sort of like sightings of him in the street taking his shirt off and throwing it into the crowds, or talking about Islam in a very masculine sense. It's it talks about expansion. Expansion can only have ever been derived from violence. So he talks about Islam in a very masculine, violent, aggressive way. But JC, what you just said there, that his faith has been shaken, but it's a money-making racket. He's got 1.3 million subscribers to his channel, from a potential 1.7 billion audience as far as members of Islam are concerned, or certainly who claim that they're Muslim anyway. So I'm kind of like undecided on this. Is he truly mental? And he's a Muslim, and he's Muslim through and through, and he speaks the way that he does because in the context that Lloyd's brought out, because these tactics are exactly that, they're Islamic tactics. Or is he aware now? Because I don't think he's as stupid as what people make him out to be. I think he probably is an intelligent guy and has worked out sufficiently, particularly when he's been exposed to arguments in Speaker's Corner with people like Bob the Builder or Chris and others, that maybe the information is there coming out to prove that Islam is nothing more than smoke and mirrors, but all you can derive from it now is the revenue from the 1.3 million.
Yes, I think we when I see not just Mohammed Hijab but other people debating, there are some that you can really tell that they are very much into it. They are true believers. With Mohammed Hijab, I don't know. He had these things, particularly after Yasser Qadi, that don't really make sense. And I never actually thought about what Lloyd has said, but that actually would make sense, that the faith is gone and you are almost like pushing yourself to still believe it or still enforce it, and you become more and more aggressive because your brain keeps telling you you are one of the bad guys, but you just keep pushing. So that might actually be the explanation. With other Muslim apologists, I think some of them, they definitely know, they have seen plenty of proofs, and they are also in it just for the money. And there will be others who are actually true believers. But when everything starts to collapse, then we're going to see which ones are the first one to abandon ship, and which ones will stay the course.
It's interesting you should say that, because I remember several years ago, and maybe you guys will remember him as well, Hamza Sotzis appeared very prominent in the Muslim Dawah scene, probably from about 2010 to about 2018. He was one of the original proposers of don't use Quranic science as a means of trying to prove Islam. But he, in the last, say, 6-7 years, not seen much of him at all. And I'm personally, I could be wrong, but it seems that he's moved away from the limelight, because it seems to me that he's dug a hole and he can't get out without digging himself deeper, perhaps. Anyway.
Yeah. I just want to mention, I had a comment from what was it, K-drama, about Malaysian Islamic school abuse. And there was a case just a few days ago of over 400 victims and 170 plus perpetrators, both men and women, 66 women as perpetrators, and many Muslim clerics as well, Islamic teachers. And the same problem is also present in this case in Pakistan in one location, over 500 children. So this is a serious problem. So yeah, because just indirectly in 2004. So, and he has refused to talk. So 500 cases, and we don't talk about it because obviously there will be repercussions. Yeah. And Chinko, if you can tell us what was the scandal at the Yaqeen Institute, just drop that in the chat. Yeah. Yeah, this is a serious, Islam has this problem as well, and Muhammad Hijab needs to maybe address issues closer to home.
Right then. So have we finished with Muhammad Hijab until the next time he says and does something in the future? So the
Yep.
next item on for a possible discussion is something that's taken place. It's on the next slide, Lloyd. And I just want to say to everybody, I've sent Lloyd some screenshots of articles we were discussing today, and I want to say thank you to Lloyd for taking the email and doing all the hard work on my behalf, because I'm computer and PC illiterate. But so moving on to the next topic of discussion that we might spend some time on is this advertisement situation that's taking place in London at the moment, where certain advertisements have been removed from the London Underground system, whilst others are allowed to appear. The interesting thing is when I did some research on this, it would seem that two that I could find that were actually removed. One was with a comedian that had a hot dog in his hand. That was removed from the underground station. It was deemed inappropriate because it was promoting fast food, and fast food is unhealthy. And the second one was a wedding cake. And yet again, the same line of reasoning. Yet this one has been allowed to go on the Underground and advertise what has to be considered a money system, which goes against the United Kingdom's banking policies. So almost like a segregated banking system for those who identify as members of the religion of peace. So what are your thoughts on having a different banking system, or having a Muslim, an Islamic monetary system in the country where you live? What are your thoughts?
I mean, that creates deliberate segregation. They are setting up their own financial structure. They're setting up their own parallel society. They are trying to eventually undermine and replace your existing laws, your finance and banking system. They're trying to replace your religion, your culture, your clothing, your names. I don't think this should be allowed. You cannot have, these are competing cultures. This is not a benign culture. And in the US, for instance, I believe the Sharia finance is worth over $4 trillion at this point, which is worth more than all US banks combined. That is a massive amount of financial clout. That is an enormous amount of money that comes in, and that money is being used to subvert governments. It's being used to bribe. It's being used to influence universities, schools, churches, judiciary. I mean, those men that attacked those armed police at Manchester airport, broke a woman's nose, beat up several men, still not charged, still out. Were they even given bail? Did they have to pay for bail? You see a two-tier judicial system, policing system, and I think they've bought off and paid off everyone that they needed to, like a mafia.
Yeah, I think it was last week or the week before, we were talking about halal food already being introduced into the fast food chains in the United Kingdom, and deliberately to appeal to the Islamic community, whereas the non-Islamic community will eat the foods anyway. It makes no difference to them, but it's almost like surreptitiously enforced on the indigenous of any particular country if you're having fast food chains that are already meant by auto going towards halal food. So it's, it seems to me like an incremental move towards something. Where if it's not affecting your diet, it's affecting your school. If it's not affecting your school, it's affecting the law. If it's not affecting the law, it's now affecting the banking system. Now, the interesting thing with this, for anybody that doesn't know, in Islam, you're not allowed to charge usury. That in the context of an
theory,
interest.
not in practice.
No,
they just do it in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to go there because what I wanted to explain to the audience was that I myself served for 20 years as a buyers manager, store manager for two different companies, and they were basically second-hand retail outlets. In this country, we may know them as cash converters. Okay,
right.
It wasn't cash converters, but it's of that like. And for those who may be not aware, about 100, 150 years ago, people in this country and Europe didn't have anything. They didn't have things like iPhones, TVs, hi-fis, and things like that. Basically, people didn't have possessions. They had the clothes on their back, whatever clothes that they had, or whatever meager possessions they had inside the house. So when they needed money, they would go to a pawnbroker's, and the only things that they would be able to pawn would be gold or their clothing. They're the only two things. So that was charged. The law was brought into place where you can charge interest. The way that pawnbroking works is different to buyback. So when you go to a secondhand shop now, as an example, and you take your laptop or your iPad or your phone, they don't pawnbroke it, they do a buyback. It works totally differently, but it still has the same purpose, to accrue a revenue. So whilst the Islamic religion may turn around and say, oh, we don't charge usury, we don't charge interest. No, what you do is charge a fee. It's exactly the same thing. You've just changed the language over. So for instance, if somebody went into a pawnbroker's and pawnbroke their ring, they would maybe get £50 for the ring, and interest is accrued at maybe 7 or 8% per month for the 6 months that for your 6-month pawnbroking contract. Now, you could pay at any point to get your ring out. Okay, you did not have to come into the shop and pay a fee to keep it over for another month. So you could put your ring in on the January and go in April the next time you visit the shop and get your ring out, and they will calculate what the interest charge has been plus the fee that you borrowed. With buyback, it works different. The way that buyback works is that if you go in on a shop on the January and you borrow £100 on your phone, there'll be a charge of maybe 25% or 32% for you to get your phone back. So you borrow 100, you have to pay 132 to get it back. However, if you can't get it back at the end of the month on January, you have to come into the shop, pay £32 to extend it for another 28 days. And yet again, extend it, yet again, extend it. So you're actually paying more money with a fixed fee than you are with a percentage over pawnbroking. So the Islamic money-making system, or the Islamic banking system, may appear to be something that is beneficial for Islamic society, but I'll challenge the figures as to whether they are in comparison to an interest-based system.
Yeah, I mean, without interest, how would they earn money? Because when I bought a car in the Middle East when I was living there, they simply charged me a certain. I requested a loan for a certain amount. They then, oddly enough, they charged me a fee of roughly 10% or 8%, which I then had to pay up front to receive the loan. So they don't, so they add fees and they hide it in various ways, but it is not in any shape, way, or form interest free.
The interesting thing is with this guy that's on there, one of them is obviously he appeared to me to be the UFC fighter Hamid Nurmagomedov, something like that. Anyway, the UFC fighter. The other one is an interesting character. I don't know if anybody's ever seen him on YouTube. His name is Mufti Menk, and he has that jovial personality, attitude about him. However, he did make an interesting comment about homosexuals being the worst of creatures, which is where the next screenshot is obviously from the Quran, from Quran X. I think it's Quran 98 verse 6. So why is it then that people in London who are responsible for vetting what adverts go on the London Underground are unhappy with adverts going on the London Underground that might promote a diet that is poor, but they're quite happy to advertise a monetary system that goes against the monetary system of this country, that you would likely have to say that you're a Muslim in order to get the benefits, if there are any benefits. So there is a prejudice involved there. And also, why are they not vetting the kind of people that are featured on the adverts when this guy has made it quite clear that homosexuals and the like are the worst of creatures? However, when we go to Quran 98 verse 6, it talks about all those that are basically not Muslim are the worst of creatures. Any comments?
Just give me the brief rundown again, because I'm a little distracted from doing different things. But whenever I hear this, it brings me to remember the idea that everyone goes, "Oh, the Talmud, the Talmud, the Talmud," and 99.9% of the time they misreport what the Talmud says. But in Islamic doctrine, it quite bluntly states, "We are the worst of creatures. We are one that have to be made war upon. We must be subjugated. We must be taxed. We are vile in the sight of Allah. Our religion is worthless. Whereas if you actually go to Israel, if you look at actions, they treat people fairly. Ah, thank you, Sheikh Riyadi. Much appreciated. Very grateful. Thank you for that donation. However, when you look at Islam, where are the Jews in all of these countries who've been expelled? That is ethnic cleansing. Look at how badly the Christians are being treated. Christian genocide in Egypt, like in Nigeria, how that is the worst Christian genocide in the world, how Christians are being slaughtered and killed in Asia, places like Malaysia, oddly enough. So you see this in action. Whereas you don't see Jews going on murdering Christians in Israel. Their people are treated fairly, that they have all rights to become part of the society and have all rights and abilities to join, I don't know, become judges, become members of parliament, etc.
JC, what are your thoughts?
Well, the whole thing with these advertisings, my feeling is that there is definitely a purpose, but it is not so that they can actually make money in this way and they all live very, very happily, because the levels of apostasy, particularly in Islamic countries, is ridiculous. But when then we get to Europe, it looks like nobody's talking about that, which it should be the other way around. It looks almost like they are trying to radicalize as many people as possible when Islam is already ended. It's just a little bit longer until everybody just figures that out. So all of these things are not going to be around in the next 50 years. But now you have this advertising with basically a hate preacher, perhaps if that is the correct way to call him. And the other day, the BBC like broadcasted the full sermon of Khamenei. So it's like, what are you doing? I think all of this is twofold. One is to tell Muslims, you see, we are still good, we are strong, we are going in the right direction, we will impose Sharia, and that's actually not the case. But on the other hand, to get as many people to really believe that, so that the bad guys will be able to do something big. Because if all of these advertising is there, they were saying, hey, guess what? The Quran doesn't come from God. It comes from this source, this source. Now people are reading the book for the first time. And we see that actually it has like plenty of contradictions. You can just destroy the belief in so many ways. And people who are now literate in Islamic countries, they are starting to realize that. But somehow we get to the West and they don't realize that. I think they are purposely ensuring that people don't find out for as long as possible. And not because they're going to make a lot of money with these schemes or whatever it is, but for something bad to happen at the population level. And you have seen as well, I'm sure over there in the UK, the increased threat of people from ISIS and Al Qaeda, particularly. All of
Just
these
find
things seem to be feeding into that, into getting people to think that if we're still very strong, we're going to take over. But if you look at the numbers, this is not like Lebanon. They don't have anything like the numbers, but they can do a lot of damage to the population.
I just find it crazy
And
that the British public, the French public, the German public, the Austrian public don't like Islam. They don't. They do not like what Islam teaches, what it stands for, its image, nothing. They do not like it. I mean, they may be respectful of Muslims, they may be tolerant of Islamic practices, but they do not like it. How can these practices continue without there being some kind of collusion with the government? Because the public absolutely positively does not support it.
That's why things like the word Islamophobia has to be redefined now, and creating such words, because you see, anybody can accuse the word.
See, look at this, guys. Just read this fool here. So we should send this person back to wherever they came from, to Saudi Arabia or Pakistan, because you can be a Muslim there. Because really, we have a choice between Jesus and a pedophile, and I think the pedophile is disqualified. But this is the kind of open bigotry that you get from Muslims.
my response to somebody like him is that by the moment that you identify yourself as a Muslim, and this goes to the 1.7 billion human beings who identify as a Muslim, is by the principle of community or community responsibility, you are by implication a promoter, a defender, an advertiser, likely somebody who would kill if the opportunity arose. For a man, one, that you cannot prove even existed, and two, even if you could prove he existed,
Yeah.
you're nothing more than a child rapist supporter. You're a killer.
Yep.
You would do all those things for him. That's what you are. So your country is nothing more than a sacred ground for an ideology that is nothing short of a blasphemy to the true God's eyes.
Islam is genuinely an apartheid ideology. It genuinely, and I mean, I've listened to this little. I listened to a little bit of this interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates recently in the U.S. Everybody and his dog misrepresents apartheid. Everyone uses it, but I don't think they necessarily use it correctly. They claim that Israelis, when it's not. Muslims definitely belong to an ideology that is very much an apartheid ideology. It views the other as lesser. It really does other
The
people.
worst of creatures. Quran 98 verse 6.
Correct. And I think Islam should be banned. It is an enemy ideology. It is a conquest ideology. It is not tolerant. It has no respect for others. It needs to be banned. I mean, think of this. How many honor killings were there in Germany, France, the UK prior to Muslims moving to those countries? How many deaths for apostasy were there in Europe prior to that? Roughly zero. So now you've got, also I was walking down the road in Warsaw. Now we don't have terrorism here in Warsaw, right, in Poland. However, the rise in shall we say, anti-terrorist barriers disguised as flower pots, that has risen incredibly across Europe. Even here in Poland they have them. Beautiful little flower pots to prevent cars from driving and killing people on the pavement. This is only due to Islam. It's not because of Buddhists or the Baha'i or the Catholics. This is 100% because of Muslims.
Absolutely. And it's not just those things that you've mentioned there. When you think about even other things that Islam does, for instance, the definition of what is kidnapping has had to be defined because of girls being kidnapped by their own parents and forced into marriages that they don't want in with men they don't know in countries that they've never been before. You know, their parents may have come from Pakistan, but the children don't necessarily have not come from there or ever been there. But when they do get there, particularly girls, it's normally to be forced into a marriage that they don't want, so that family member can get a green card to come and live in this country. So the ideology and the impact, and also consanguineous marriages as well, where first cousins marry because Islam says it's okay to marry first cousin and gives birth to a person with mental or emotional defects.
Physical defects.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Tell me, JC, I mean, you're an author. You deal with these issues as well, but from where you are in Europe and your travels across Europe, do you find that people would prefer to have Islam banned and would prefer to have its presence in Europe revoked?
Certainly, yes. Unfortunately, I think that boat sailed a long time ago. I think we are way past that point of no return. You cannot ban Islam. Imagine the media, everything has gone so far in the left that they will say, okay, and why don't you ban Christianity? We are a religion too, and all of those things. There is no reason to, or that you can put forward and say, look,
but a political system not very different to communism and Nazism and fascism. It is very, very similar to those political systems. It has an entire political ideology written in its books. It has an entire legal system. When you look at Christianity, we have no legal text. We don't have an entire corpus of laws determining sales, determining slavery. They have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of pages of Islamic laws determining things like how to sell things, how to buy things, how to do this, how to do that.
How to wipe your anus.
Yes.
That does exist in Islam.
Yes. However, the people bought the whole religion of peace, and jihad is an internal struggle, and they are buying all of those things. Try explaining to somebody that Islam is the perfect death cult and a totalitarian state. merged into one. They are not going to understand that. That's why Piers Morgan struggles to understand Mohammed hijab, because it's a different ideology. So that thing about banning it, no, it would be just not just conflict, but almost civil war. Banning it would be well, basically impossible, but we don't need to. That's the whole thing. That is not identifying Islam as a bad thing and therefore say, okay, so you want Islam, go to Yemen and have it there, but not here. Now is about Muslims finding out that they have been lied to for their whole lives, and they will destroy it from within. This is about membership. They are the ones who will be asked to go out there, do bad things, and so on. And they're very vulnerable to indoctrination because the whole process on the psychology of it. They are the ones that have to just open their eyes, and they will be the ones that end it. If in the UK you try to pass any laws to say, okay, no more Islam allowed, good luck. You would just have a revolt and lots of people will get hurt. But if the people in the UK open their eyes, which they are going to do, unfortunately, they're going to do it reactively when something really bad happens, and then they find out that the solution was already there. If they did it proactively, and enough Muslims find out, that's when they can just step up and say, hang on a minute. So all of this is very, very horrible, but it is up to them. The population don't understand Islam. Only Muslims do. So they have to be shown that everything is false.
You know, when I was in the Middle East, sorry, last point, quick point, Thunderous. When I was in the Middle East, when I went to church, they would have police presence outside the church. One, to obviously make sure that no Muslims went into the church, and two, to prevent any acts of violence against Christians at those churches. But also you had to have a big wall around the church, and you couldn't do anything that could be heard outside because you had to keep your practices private. Whereas, of course, you'd hear the azan everywhere. And even in non-Muslim countries now, France, US, you name it, they have the azan. I think that should be banned because, you know, Putin did something really right when he said to the Saudi ambassador, when they asked him when they'll have a mosque in Moscow, and he said, as soon as we can have a cathedral in Riyadh. And I think this is the rule that we should play. But also, I mean, we have a right to defend our own culture and not allow it to be usurped by others who have nefarious intent.
I think the difficulty in all of this, and it goes back to a point that we've discussed many times, Lloyd, is that the difficulty you've got with Islam in comparison to other religions and ideologies is that if Islam doesn't get its way, it is prepared to kill. Blood will be spilt in one way or another, in one guise or another. And that's a very real threat. So going to something like this advertisement on the London Underground, you have to ask the question, if the other two advertisements and probably many more were vetted and deemed inappropriate, then what was the thought or thinking behind that this could be allowed to go on the London Underground? It could be many things. Now, we live in London is a multicultural city now. It's probably more non-white than it is white. So are we finding people employed in certain locations that share the ideology, that therefore allow and give tacit support to advertisements like this going up because they're in control of what does get advertised and what doesn't get advertised? Or is it deemed a threat or hate speech or bigotry when something like this is proposed as an advertisement and you challenge the advertisement whether it can go up or not, and therefore there could be an implication on your job role or your career as a result of challenging this? So I think there are many other factors to consider when you're looking at things like this taking place now. Yeah.
Shall we move to another topic, to the next one?
Yeah. That was just the Quran verse. I was just quoting the Quran verse there. Right. So this is an interesting one. There's several pages on this. The reason why I brought several on this one was because to show that other people, not many people had covered it, but it had been covered. And this is a street preacher in Bristol who, what's his name? Dear Moodley. There it is. Pastor Dear Moodley. He speaks quite openly. He has a loudspeaker and tries to engage in responses with the people that he's talking to, which you find in many towns and cities where you'll have somebody with a loudspeaker and basically trying to engage a reaction. He has been targeted by the religion of peace because he was asked a question by a Muslim about Muhammad, And when he was asked why he doesn't accept Muhammad, what do you think his response was as to why he doesn't accept Muhammad as a prophet?
Why does he not accept Muhammad as a prophet?
Yeah.
I mean, for moral reasons, first of all.
Yeah.
Muhammad is clearly someone who is morally unfit to be a leader in Christian Western terms. And of course, knowing Islamic behavior, remember, actions speak louder than words, and seeing what these Muslims are doing, seeing the authoritarian behavior, seeing the violence, I would reject that. This is contrary to the example of Jesus, and this is not something that we believe in. JC, what about your thoughts?
Well, being this guy is a pastor, so probably he would have said after Jesus, there cannot be any prophets, only Antichrist. If the question was addressed to me, it's like, how long do you have? Should we speak for 3 weeks and I give you all of my reasons? But I would have thought that it would be a religious reason in the case of this guy.
Yeah, I mean, how many Muslims haven't attacked people who've criticized it? And you've got comedians, you have authors, you have cartoonists living in fear, living under police protection, having to change their names, their identities, their faces, move to different countries because Muslims will murder them because they have made a cartoon.
But the thing is, though, Lloyd, when you think about it, the pastor gave the right answer. He spoke a historical fact. This goes back to discussions we've had previously as a result of Darwinian atheism, where truth has become hate speech, facts have become intolerance. Having an opinion is now bigotry. So telling the truth has now become a revolutionary thing. Now, this preacher, this pastor, commented about Muhammad and Aisha. He got arrested for it. He got arrested for telling the truth. This is the world that we're living in now, where the police are there to support the feelings of a reaction that was prompted by a Muslim asking the question in the first place. I would dare say that the Muslim probably asked the question quite deliberately, knowing what the response is, in order for the Muslim to turn around and say, I am now a victim of hate speech. This pastor now needs to be arrested. The interesting thing is, as well, when you do a little bit further research of this, it was done. It was done at a religious sensitive time because it was Ramadan.
So
Yeah,
that's the line of reasoning the police used in his arrest.
in a Christian country. In a Christian country.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, someone says wokeism is anti-Christ. Well, wokeism is Marxism. It is American Marxism. Wokeism is American Marxism. Maoism is Chinese Marxism, or Marxism with Chinese characteristics. Wokeism is Marxism with American characteristics. And this is all based on Marxism, creating different divisions. It's all about creating division, not unity. Remember, they said division is strength. No, unity is strength. So this is, it is definitely, Marx was very likely a Satanist. Even Jordan Peterson had a discussion on that about 2 months ago. And this is now becoming a well-accepted idea that Karl Marx was a Satanist, despite his pretensions to being an atheist. And in fact, in many cases, when I did my atheism series, atheism effectively is Satanism and Satanism is atheism. The intersection between the two is rather large.
Undoubtedly. The interesting thing is, if people look at this, it turns around and talks about, like Dudley Moore's, D.R. Moodley's legal bill that would be paid, and it was a win for free speech. I would counter and turn around and say a win for free speech for how long? This could be something that could serve as a test model in order to find out where to iron out the kinks as far as policing free speech is concerned. Also, when you consider that when he was arrested, other people had also complained as well from the LGBTQ. So when you add the number of people that would have been affected by Dear Moodley's evangelizing, the target seems to be Christianity. It seems to be everybody's waiting to be offended by the Christian moral standard, and not, so Did you not see a pattern
But
developing
you
there?
see these little tents where Muslims have their Qurans and they start doing preaching, they hand out books, and the police never harass those. But you do see them, even black pastors, get arrested on UK streets. I've seen videos of that.
Yeah. And the interesting thing as well is with his equipment as well, the police took down all his equipment, his boards and things, and had them destroyed. And they had chapters and verses from the Bible on there. They were destroyed. If this was an Islamic situation, do you really think the police would have taken down any advertising boards that had the Quran verses on them and destroyed them?
No,
There you go.
because yeah, they'd be afraid because the Muslims would then threaten to riot. There'd be a revolt, and the government would obviously, in its cowardice, back down. Yeah, your thoughts, Jesse?
Well, I think is a lot of hypocrisy because I actually read what happened with this guy, and yes, he was saying things of case. I think he was saying something like, "If you're gay, you will go to hell" or something of the sort. But it is the Christian values which have created this the Christian faith that has created the Christian values, which makes you be able to disagree with this guy or hear whatever he says and just walk past it. But you're having now the woke, say, generation attacking Christianity, which is attacking Christian values, thinking, well, once we get rid of these people that they're complaining about me and making me feel bad, we're all going to be very free and we're going to have a lovely life. And it's like, that's not how it works. The moment you remove, basically, they are in a system that they're absolutely free to do that. And they're attacking that system from within, thinking that when that's destroyed, everything will be wonderful. But what will happen is socialism, communism, or Islamism. And the hypocrisy is real. If this guy is on the street and says gays will go to hell, it's like, wait until Islam takes over, because they are not going to tell you that they will go to hell. They're going to send them to hell. Like women who want to actually be very free or anything to do with abortion is like, and they have problems with Christianity because they have different values or different opinions on that. It's like, destroy Christianity and see what happens. You're not going to have a very nice free world. You're going to be taken over by the people who are going to make you experience hell on earth. So it's all very backwards. They don't understand. They're criticizing their freedoms from within, and it would be replaced by something very evil.
Yeah, no, you cannot have Christian values without having Christianity. You cannot get the benefits of Christianity without having the actual doctrine. And yeah, Hatun Tash was also arrested multiple times, even though she was the one being attacked, because it's easier to simply get rid of you than to deal with 500 angry Muslims about to burn down the city.
Yep,
Very
absolutely.
true.
So, yeah, it just seems that the police, and I think also you want us to bear in mind the type of police that we have today as well. We're not talking about the police enforcers that we had in this country 20, 34 years ago that were basically ex-squaddies or big men, strong men, capable men, disciplined men. We're now getting college and university graduates that have been pre-programmed with the woke DEI ideology of weak mentalness.
But he says here, look, this guy says sex is binary, and what the woke do is they talk about gender. Gender is I feel, I pretend to be, I made something up. But when archaeologists look at skeletons, they see male skeletons and female skeletons. The sex is obvious. In 1,000 years, when they look at all our skeletons, it's going to be male and female. They're not going to know your gender. They're just going to see men and women. So sex is binary because men don't have babies. But of course, the Democrats and the woke want to tell us that yes, men can. But we know this is absolutely untrue because men cannot have babies, and of course, then they want to redefine men. These are nominalists. These are people that play with words and redefine words to try to distort reality that way.
Absolutely.
Yes, and we see what happens when the very vocal minority are really not only listened to, but they start getting their way. If they are the vocal minority, if they are the minority, they're the minority for a reason. And I think people have realized that people need to wake up and start standing up against these things, because we are in a generation where so many people don't even know what a woman is, and that's very, very worrying.
I've said this many times to you before, Lloyd, that when
They
you
do know. Actually, they do know, because the queer ideology, if you watch guys like James Lindsay, for instance, queer ideology is meant to be disruptive. It looks at the norms, it takes Western social norms, it takes Christian norms, and deliberately creates ideas that undermine and disrupt those, that destroy those. It introduces, using free speech and using the liberal openness that Western societies are famous for, it uses these features of Western culture against it to introduce things that are deliberately disruptive. When you read the founders of the queer ideology, all of it is designed to destroy, to create disruption, to create friction, to cause distortion, to cause mayhem, to cause confusion. That is the whole point, because ultimately they want to burn the system down, and somehow magically a new, better world will arise. All they're looking for is to cause destruction. So they do know exactly what it is. And half the reason that they have to lie, and half the reason that they have to conceal and deceive, is the fact that they realize what they're doing is dishonest, and therefore they want to hide it, they want to conceal it, they want to hide it from the world, because they are in some sense ashamed. They're aware of that what they're doing is destructive. What do you think of that, JC?
I think that that's spot on. And but in terms of particularly Islam, because if a society is absolutely fine and cohesive, particularly the bad Islam is never going to do anything bad. But when there is chaos, that's actually when they thrive. They will actually get in there and just make things worse. So there are so many problems over there in the UK with all of these different things that are going on, and you don't know which ones you can do something about and which ones you can't. The only one that is very, very big, and we don't know exactly like how much trouble they're causing, is Islam. And like Lloyd, you said before about well, what happens if they would remove something from an Islamic preacher on the street? There would be chaos, or they would arrest Hatun Tash. So we know that there is a huge problem there, and the police are not able to even act. We don't know if they are willing, but certainly they are not acting. So the problem, we know there's a huge problem with Islam, and that's the only one that we as citizens, we can do something about it. And it's telling Muslims, hey, this is very, very evil. You need to do something about it. From within, they will make it collapse. When that happens, then we will see what is happening with society and what areas were actually not a problem to begin with. But now it's everything, it's just like so many problems all put together that we don't know exactly how to tackle any of them. It just seems too big. But we certainly can do something about Islam.
At some point, we just have to go, look, no, we draw the line, and at some point, you just got to reject these things, not allow them, because these are ideologies that are designed to destroy your culture. You cannot tolerate them. You cannot have good faith dialogues. The whole point of these sophist tactics, their twisting and corruption of language, is to bypass honesty, is to bypass logic, is to destroy the use of logic. You cannot have a good faith debate with people because they're not acting in good faith. At some point, these must be, I believe, banned. They need to be recognized. They need to be rejected very, very strongly. These are enemy ideologies.
Yes, and we're going to see it collapsing. The Islamic countries, they are already, well, they never actually had any patience for things like wokeness. We have it actually in Europe. But people are starting to wake up. Every single day, there are more people in Europe saying, hey, hang on a minute. Now you guys are taking the piss. We were very tolerant, but we are not so tolerant anymore. And I alluded earlier to the whole thing with particularly Lebanon back in the 70s. They, for a country to really fall because of Islam, they really need to have really huge numbers. The numbers in Europe, they don't make any sense. They are like 2%, 3%, 5%. I think some countries might be even up to 10. There is absolutely nothing that they could do. And Islam has now been proven false so hard that it's not going to really grow. The majority of Muslims out there, well, not the majority, but lots and lots of them, they are apostates. They're really apostates. They have seen the light, but they cannot say anything because otherwise they lose everything in their lives. So they don't have any numbers to do anything serious. Yet everything that you see in the media is, fastest growing religion. They're now praying on the streets to show strength. It's like, no, they don't have the numbers. They're doing that because there is something malicious happening that we don't know of. What I think is they're trying to get as many people as possible to still believe that they are going to win, whatever that means, and then do some things that are really, really bad. But when you look at the numbers, will any country be Islamic in Europe in the next 50 years? No, Islam is finished. In the next 50 years has gone already. So it's a temporary thing, and it is also dangerous for that reason, because the very bad guys are not going to just sit down and watch it as it all just crumbles. They will do something.
We know this is an assault on Christianity, as Thunderous has here. Praying at home may be illegal under Scottish abortion law. So these are very woolly and vaguely worded laws that are coming on the books in the UK. Things are very bad in the UK. Residents are told that being on private property is no bar to prosecution under new legislation.
Your home is
Thunderous,
not your
take it away.
castle. Your home is not your castle anymore. So I don't know what the meterage. I don't know if it was 100 meters or 150 meters or 200 meters. Forgive me, I forget what the number is. But if you live in a property within a certain distance from an abortion clinic, and you are openly observed to be engaging in some kind of visual activity that might be deemed, inferred, or interpreted as upsetting to somebody on their way to have a child murdered, because that's effectively what you're doing, then you could be arrested, face criminal charges. I forget what the number of years in prison could be, but I think the fine could be £10,000. Now, you could work. Well, first of all, you'd have to ask the question: how are they going to manifest a law around this? Because if you've got a property near an abortion clinic or a child murdering clinic, however you want to summarize that, what is the householder doing, and what are you doing looking in the house?
But that is the Sharia, because in the Sharia, you are supposed to keep an eye on your neighbor, and if they do something that is against the Sharia, you're allowed to enter that house and you need to chastise them or take action, physical action. And you need to report this, and you need to bring friends to it. So this is policing by the community of the community, which is what the Stasi did, which is what happened under communist governments, communist regimes. But this is another implementation of the Sharia.
Can you get the Bible up, Lloyd? I should have got a screen image of these verses. Can you get Psalms 139 up?
Which is it, Psalm?
Psalms 139. And what we're looking
239
for
or
is
139?
139.
Psalm 139. Let me do that again.
And
Here
the
we
verses we want are 13 to 16. So if you go scroll down to 13, and then 16 should be there as well. So if you look at these verses, for thou hast possessed, where we go? Thou hast possessed my reins, thou covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right. My substance was not hid from thee, when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written down, which in continuance were fashioned, whereas yet there was none of them. That has got to be probably one of the most beautiful poetic verses about a child forming from conception in the womb of its mother. I challenge any human being to find anything as eloquently written, because everybody listening and reading this post now is a byproduct of those very words. You know, we've all gone through this process, and yet this verse can now be deemed hate speech and can get you arrested if you are somebody that has this on your wall or on a plaque that could be visible within a certain meterage of a child killing clinic. You could be arrested for having this part of the Bible displayed.
Yeah, it's crazy. They want to arrest you because you're going to hurt the feelings of abortionists. I mean, this is the return of Moloch. This is the return of Baal. This is the return of child sacrifice. And you cannot hurt the feelings of these people, and they will arrest you for that. This is arrested because of hurt feelings. This is insanity.
It's exactly that, Lord. It's insanity. You're hurting my feelings while I go over there to have my child murdered. I'm going
Well,
over
there's
there,
What?
going over to that location to have my child murdered and removed from my body because I was stupid enough to allow to get pregnant without using any form of contraception. I was irresponsible, got myself pregnant. But you're hurting my feelings by reminding me of the reality of how a child is conceived and grows in its womb. Sorry, JC.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to actually make a joke, which is they didn't actually find the loophole yet. So if people are being arrested for praying outside of an abortion clinic or something like this, when they are asked, all that they have to say is, "Yeah, I'm praying to Allah," and they are free to go.
There's that. There is that. Yeah, that's a. There is that.
See,
I'm trying to find the Sharia law that states if someone is looking into your house, you can put out their eye and there will be no blame on you. So if someone from the street looks into your house and sees you doing something, you are allowed to put out their eye. This is within Sharia. And okay, here it is. Whoever peeps into a house. Now these laws are all derived from the Sharia, one way or another. Whoever peeps into a house without its people's leave may put out his eye. This is really an extension of this idea within the Sharia.
Absolutely outrageous. Yeah. The Exodus said eye for eye, tooth for tooth, foot for foot, soul for soul. This is merely using your eye can have your eye put out.
Now look at this one. If a man looks at you without permission and you throw a rock at him and knocked out his eye, you would not have committed any offense. So if someone looks at you the wrong way and you retaliate against them, because they will generalize this as retaliation, you're allowed to retaliate. So we as Christians are looking at them in the wrong way. We make them feel bad and they retaliate, and therefore they are not committing any kind of offense, but we are. So through the back door, we are having Sharia law in spirit, if not to the letter, imposed on the British public.
Yeah, agreed.
Any thoughts on that, JC? I mean, considering that you're very good at taking ideas and as to how people would use and manipulate ideas in the fictional world.
well, I'm actually trying to think why this was actually written by some caliphs like over 1,000 years ago. Like, why would they actually describe that and telling to one of their guys, well, if somebody looks at you wrong? I cannot even think about the context in which that actually made it into this book. It seems like absolute nonsense. And the whole thing about peeps into your house is now, a peep for an eye is just weird. Why would they add that?
Rose, the mentally ill Muslim, is back. We need to shut up about abortion. How did those women fall pregnant? I wonder if men had anything to do with that. Well, these women that can just fall pregnant on their own, So no one should be hustling women. And when they're in that kind of, how did they get there? I wonder, there must have been a guy involved. So Rose, just for the audience, Rose has a long history of saying mentally retarded things. She's low IQ and really should not be allowed on the internet. So mom needs to take away her keyboard and internet rights.
Why should we shut up about abortion? I don't understand her point of view. Why is she not expanding on why we should shut? Can you explain why we should shut up about abortion?
It's her child, and after because after intercourse, it's her decision. She can do what she likes. The guy doesn't matter. That is simply just an attack on men. It's an attack on relationships. It's an attack on families. It's an attack on authority. It's an attack on. This is basically now you've got. I can do what I want. This is narcissism, as Andrew was mentioning. This is narcissism to the nth degree. No one can tell me what I want to do. No one can tell me. That's all it is. That is just utter narcissism. It's really individuality to the extreme.
Is Rose a Darwin atheist, or is she religious?
She's mentally ill. My experience of this woman is she's an atheist.
So she's an atheist then. If she's mentally ill, she's an atheist. Well, if you're an atheist where your atheism is predicated on Darwinian evolution anyway, then
she defends Islam, though. She defends Islam. That's the weird part, going in the past.
Well,
right.
There's probably a lot of similarities between Darwin atheism and Islam anyway. Both of them appeal to science, and both of them have got no science to defend it.
Right. Yeah. Well, Just we didn't actually really speak like much on in terms of abortion. In fact, I didn't. I know that this is a topic that really bothers people, and everybody has their own opinion. But we are actually not really advocating for anything. It's not like we're going to the House of Commons and saying, "Hey, do this, do that." So from where we're standing is an opinion based. But like I said, like half an hour ago, this is the problem that you have. Because of Christianity, you have Christian values, and therefore you can actually fight for abortion, and that's absolutely fine. You don't have that under Islam. You get rid of Christianity, Christian values, don't think it's going to be a paradise, and then you can do whatever you want. You will do what you are commanded. You are attacking the peoples for their opinions, trying to shut them up. But if that system falls, then you will have the tyrants. You will not be allowed to have the conversation. Try to even speak about the
Yeah.
laws or the rulers in Russia, China, or an Islamic country. But if you are in the West, you can criticize the party that won and nothing happens to you. So you can talk about these things. But for some reason, everything has gone as to, well, we have one opinion in the media and the politicians. And if anyone talks about the opposite view, the one that we don't agree with, they have to be shut down. That is tyranny. That doesn't end well.
Yeah.
It never has.
Just a quick divergence. This comment was deleted, and right, correctly so. But this person here, this person found it funny what happened to the Christians in Pakistan. I was smiling and sipping my tea when watching them cry. So if it's good for the goose, thank you, TJ Bowman. That's very much appreciated. Thank you again, really. Very grateful. So Mahmoud was happy with the oppression of and the violence of these Muslims against Christians in Pakistan. Well, if it's good for the goose, it needs to be good for the gander. Now, here's the thing: if governments don't step in, because this is unfair. So, and Islam is inherently unfair because it hates, it detests, it is disgusted by the unclean non-Muslim. If you are wondering if you are unclean and considered dirty and filthy in Islam, and you're not a Muslim, then yes, that's you it's talking about. So at some point, people are going to be very angry, and we need to be openly able to talk about this and have government take action, because our rights need to be protected. And if it's not going to be done by the government, at some point there will be a revolt. There will be action taken by people. But this also shows just how dirty, just how disgusting the attitude of Muslims are, the naked, raw aggression they have. And we need to be aware of the fact that this is really what they think. We just, when they're telling you, believe them. And at some point, so we need to take strong action. Maybe we don't want to be physically harming them, let's say, but we need to then remove them from our polite society, because people do not belong in polite Western society and to be sent back.
Right then. So shall we move on to our last discussion point? Should be a quick one, really, because the headline speaks for itself.
Yeah. Safe access 200 meters. So you've, yeah.
Lloyd, if you and I were doing security at Butlins and we see 5 men go to the women's toilets, what's your reaction going to be, and what's my reaction going to be? I think we're going to be looking at each other and thinking,
these are perverts going to invade women's spaces and perv on the women. That's really what it is.
Do you notice it's not trans woman, it's trans women? Do you know how many there were? 5. 5 men dressed as women or claiming to be trans women were in ladies' toilets at a holiday camp. One has to bear in mind a holiday camp is predominantly for families. What the heck? And their guidelines at Butlins were to suspend the security guards.
Wow. No, obviously this is, women have no rights. I mean, if you cannot identify women, right, how can you protect them in law? But here's the thing. They cannot identify what a woman is, but yet somehow they can identify what a man is. And when a man sees as a woman, he becomes a woman. And how do you protect? I mean, this is incoherent. How do you protect women then? How do you protect women's rights, women's spaces, goals? children. And the incidence of being sexual predators amongst these trans people is far, far significantly, probably hundreds of times higher. I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but they are significantly higher than the general population.
Mark Shark, you're quite right. We're living in the twilight zone. I concur with you there. And the only reason I took this article from Mixmag is because in the 90s, when I was doing my nightclubbing, I used to subscribe to the Mixmag magazine to see what nightclubs to go to for that weekend. I found it quite ironic that of all the publications I could have got, it was my old favorite from the 90s, Mixmag, that covered this article, because very few articles or newspapers or media sources wanted to cover this. Not mainstream media. You will notice as well, people listening, if you live in the UK, what mainstream media channels have you seen discuss the topics that we've been discussing tonight? That in itself is a damning indictment.
Yeah. Transphobic. I mean, it used to be men protected women. Now men are supposed to stand aside when men in dresses spend time in women's intimate spaces, which is insane. There's someone called Trinity that is saying here that the position of the church, this is really odd, interesting comments, but let me just start with this one. If having the child will destroy the person's soul or state of mind and well-being, then she has the right to terminate the pregnancy. For a minor, that will be in consultation with the guardians or parents. So yeah, according to this person, this is the official position of the church and should be legal to any just society. Which church is that? Because I know from the Catholic Church, abortion is a sin. It's a crime. It's murder. So I've seen one in Canada. I saw, with the States, I saw a woman priest wearing a Planned Parenthood shawl with a PP logo large on the shawl, and she was preaching and saying that she's had 2 abortions, and because God doesn't want people to have kids that they don't want, so you should kill them because because that's not loving. You see, it's not loving to have kids that when you think about it, I don't have the finances. And then she had this whole lecture. It was disgusting. She was saying, because if you plan the child and you think, yeah, it'll be great, but if your circumstances aren't right, then really you should, because to bring those children into the world would not be loving. That's murder. So yeah, that is not a priest. That is someone who has sold their soul, who has moved out of the church, not a Christian, but they are there as a priest. And then, yeah, so which church is this? I want to know which church has this official position, Trinity.
Trinity says Catholic Church.
No, that must be the Anglican Church. The Catholic Church has a Trinity says Catholic Church. Trinity, that would be false. I'm pretty sure that would be false. The Catholic Church is against abortion. It calls abortion murder. I would need to see some serious evidence. But I've seen Protestant churches, by all means, say, yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out.
So I just want to ask a question of Villainous SSB, who comments, telling God who he is. Is that in the context of, like, are you making that comment in a sense of now mankind is telling God who he is rather than God telling who mankind is?
No, I mean, he could be referring to Trinity, saying that he's just. It could be in reference to that.
Okay. But that's all the news I have for this week, Lloyd. And JC, did you have any further comments on going to Butlins and maybe having a few drinks with some trans men and parting shots as they go off to the ladies and you go off to the men's?
I didn't have, I've never actually witnessed something like that. It would have been weird to me, if not to say just wrong. Everybody has their opinion in all of this. Mine is probably what the silent majority is, which is a guy should not enter a woman's bathroom, even if he identifies himself as a woman. He's still a man. Everything is different in his biology, including his strengths, and that also opens the door for bad people to do bad things. If you live in a society where everybody's going to act wonderfully 100% of the time, we could have that conversation and say, okay, what do we do about it? But that's not the case. The moment that you do say that is okay, you're going to have people doing very bad things. You're putting people in danger. So and for some reason, that's a difficult thing to even say nowadays, when 20 years ago that would be absolutely common sense, but all of a sudden you cannot say the actual obvious. But no, that would be like a different conversation. I try to focus as much as possible just on Islam, because that's the one thing that is going to end really, really badly very soon.
So I just want to mention here the Catholic Church. This is from the Catholic Church's official AI. Now, I have had my run-ins with Catholics who are as dishonest, deceitful, and ignorant of Catholic doctrine as everyone, as Muslims can be about their own doctrine, because I've had Catholics lie to me and lie about me. I'm still quite annoyed by that. But that said, what is the position on abortion? Is it murder? The Catholic Church, now this is the official AI, which is supposed to be used by priests, by Catholics, by Catholic clergy, by Catholic senior clerics, and so on. So this is what the Catholic Church gives to everyone. The Catholic Church maintains a clear and unwavering position on abortion. It is a grave moral evil and equates it with murder. This teaching has been consistent throughout the Church's history and is articulated in various documents. So the sanctity of human life must be respected and protected. So Trinity, were you wrong or were you dishonest? Please type one of those words in the chat. Let me know. You were wrong or you were dishonest. Let me know which. I'd like to know.
Right then. On that note, I think we're now at 7:30. I'm ready to call it quits. Are you guys ready to call it quits for tonight?
Yep. So any final words from you, JC?
No, well, thank you very much for inviting me over. It's been a very, very good chat. And yeah, just a pleasure. I hope that people watching have actually enjoyed what we have been discussing. And I look forward to talking with you guys again soon.
Yeah. So thanks, guys. Yeah. Look, Villainous mentions here, this might be in a medical, in case, look, if there's a medical emergency and there's no way to save the mother, right, they might both die and so on. That's an extreme situation. But what people do is they take the extremes and they move them to the middle and say, well, yeah, it's okay because it's okay on the extreme to do so. Therefore, it's okay 100% of the time. Remember, if you go back, you will see Hillary Clinton saying things like abortions should be safe, legal, and rare, right? I believe that was the claim. Safe, legal, and rare. I believe that was the statement they used. That was how they slipped it in. Safe, legal, and rare. Now they want to make it the norm. And then they turn around and tell you, oh my God, we're not having any babies. We need to import Africa and the Middle East into Europe and America because we're not having babies. I wonder why, right? And if you look at the founding of Planned Parenthood, the founder of Planned Parenthood, and I have several videos on my channel, go look at those short videos on my channel. The whole point was that was a Darwinian movement designed to bluntly kill black people. They wanted to wipe out the black race, want to reduce it as much as possible, and they pushed abortion. And there was a guy called Martin Luther King who happened to stand behind that movement. Martin Luther King is not the nice man you all think he was. No. He might have said some nice things. Martin Luther King was a nasty communist piece of work. There's some very dark, nasty, evil things about Martin Luther King. Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. You could say the same thing about Mother Teresa and Mahatma Gandhi as well. They're not the people, or even Mandela, Nelson Mandela, not the men, the heroes, or the icons that people have held them up to be. Far from it. But I just want to say thank you to JC for joining us tonight. Really enjoyed your company, really enjoyed your inputs as well. I thought you had some very good comments to make and good contribution. I do sincerely hope that we see you again, JC.
Okay, thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks, guys. So everyone, God bless. Thank you for spending time with us here and have a good night. And we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.